Hi, my name is Brandon Estes. I'm a senior at Broadman High School, and I also serve as the director on the National 4-H Geospatial Leadership Team. Today I'm going to walk through a short student-led demo showing how teachers and students can use GIS in AP Biology, specifically in Unit 7 on natural selection. The key idea behind this demo is pretty simple, that biology doesn't change, but the evidence does. Instead of answering questions only through text or static graphs, students and teachers will be able to use maps and real-world data to observe patterns, gather evidence, and explain how natural selection works in real environments. I'll be modeling both perspectives in this demo. First, how a teacher can quickly set up a bell ringer with National Geographic's MapMaker app, and then secondly, how a student can actually use ArcGIS to go ahead and build a really quick instant app experience for them to share with their peers, teacher, and to finally build a claim evidence reasoning response using those tools. So we'll start off with the quick bell ringer activity. So I'm going to go to my browser and then just look up National Geographic MapMaker. And then the first link that says MapMaker Launch Guide, I'm just going to left click on that. I'm going to hit Launch MapMaker. And then from there, I'll be brought into this instant app experience called MapMaker. So this is actually an app built by Esri with National Geographic that makes it easier for teachers and students to go ahead and interact with GIS data. So you'll see that I have a few buttons I can click here. So there's the home button to go ahead and bring me to my location. I can use the plus and minus symbols to zoom in and out. If I orient the direction in a different way, doesn't look like I can actually do that, but to set myself to true north, I would just hit that icon. I can change the base map, so maybe I want something with a little less graphics. I just want to see a black and white outline of countries. Or maybe I want enhanced contrast for accessibility. There's dozens of different base maps you can select there. I can open a different map if I want to for all these preset maps that are already existing. Map layers to go ahead and view the different layers that I'm going to have on my map. I'll get more to that in a second. I can use the measure tool to go ahead and see how far two distances are from each other. And then if I want to get rid of it, I just hit clear. I can X out of that tool. Sketching, for example, maybe I want to highlight a certain area on my map. So I'll do like that. Then double left click in order to complete it. Again, once I'm done, oh, whoops. Actually, let me go to map layers, hit the remove icon, and there I'm done. And finally, the more important part is I can hit this little add layer button in the bottom left on my map bar. So for this demo, since I'm teaching AP Biology Unit 7 on natural selection, right, I want to be able to show the biodiversity on this, across the world, but I also want to be able to show students the environmental factors that are going to affect said biodiversity, right? So I'm just going to look up and search for biodiversity. Looks like I found terrestrial, which is what I want. So I'm just going to hit the plus icon, and there we go. It's been added to my map. And let's get some environmental data in here. So what about maybe annual precipitation is one factor. And let's also add annual temperature. So I'm going to hit X, and X out of that. And so right off the bat, we're pretty overwhelmed by just the amount of information that's being shown on our screen. The nice thing about MapMaker is I can just left click on map layers, and I can go ahead and just toggle the visibility with this little checkbox on the top right. So I'm going to go ahead and turn all those off, and let me actually return to a base map that I thought was pretty decent, which was the black and white outline, right? Just so I can really see where and have those colors pop out. So I'm going to go back to map layers, and let's turn on terrestrial biodiversity one more time. So might be a good idea actually to turn back on enhanced contrast. And again, you can always, with just a few clicks of the button, change the look and the feel of your map. All right. So I'm already noticing that there's different colors here, but what does that actually mean? Well, I can left click on the legend button down here and go ahead and see that this is how that data set's built up. So areas that are dark green have high rarity and high richness, and then areas that are a little bit more white are low rarity and richness. And then I can see the different colors and how they make sense. I can also simply left click on an area to be able to see how many richness or rarity. So I have a 65/85 score here in this area of the southeastern United States. So let's maybe zoom to an area that I already know is very biodiverse, right? The Amazon River Basin. So I can already see off the bat that there's a lot of green and a lot of blue here. So let me go ahead and click on this area. Like, see, 91 richness, 89 rarity. Or let's go to a different area. What about sub-Saharan Africa? So over here in Nigeria, same deal. 92 richness, 97 rarity. So now we've already gone ahead and shown students, in this bell ringer exercise, like, okay, here are the areas that are incredibly biodiverse in the world. But the really real power behind GIS is the fact that you can see different pieces of information at the same time. So what about, let's turn off biodiversity for a second and turn back on annual precipitation. So right off the bat, and then let me turn this back on here. Whoops. There we go. So let's see. We're noting that the area north of Bogota, near Peru, and then near Sao Paulo and Buenos Aires, all the coastlines are pretty dark green. They have a lot of biodiversity, right? So let's go to annual precipitation now and see that same link. Whoops. Need to turn on swipe there. And so what we can see is that this area, especially north of Bogota, where that river basin is, that there's an incredible amount of precipitation. So looks like, oh, whoops. Let's actually look at the legend real quick. So we can see that the high end has around 6,553.5 units is what they're measuring in here, the amount of precipitation that this is receiving annually. So that we're now being able to show students the connection between annual precipitation and that biodiversity that we were just looking at, to have them be able to kind of get, how the environment is really affecting biodiversity, right? So going back to the worksheet that we can hand out to students, we can ask them to go ahead and start maybe recording at least 3 spatial patterns they've noticed, besides the ones we noted here. So besides maybe looking at the Amazon River Basin, Sub-Saharan Africa, and maybe like India here, maybe they're making connections with areas such as, Saudi Arabia, or they're looking at this area near north of China, or in the middle of China. Or maybe they make a connection between these areas near the Great Lakes. The possibilities are really endless, but we want the students to kind of go ahead and just really quickly add those layers and start toying around and seeing how these environmental factors affect, biodiversity in those regions. So we've already gone ahead and used GIS on a surface level, and with an area or with a tool that required no setup, no accounts, and it was really just pattern noticing. Notice that I never had to sign into anything, I never had to make an account, and that students could easily replicate what I just did. They can just hit add layers, they search for the 3 layers that we added, and they're more than free to go ahead and start exploring on their own. So this is a great example of how teachers can use MapMaker, especially considering the amount of low amount of time that you may have, or just wanting to use these tools but not necessarily knowing how to go ahead and grab these resources. But where this gets really interesting is we can turn it back on students and have students go ahead and make their own experiences and make their own ArcGIS investigation, so to speak. So we're going to go ahead and conduct our own parallel investigation. And so what we're going to task students with is that we want them to go ahead and look at a species or population and then look at a trait of interest that they're interested in. So they can go ahead and from a list that you give them beforehand, or maybe they go ahead and Google and see different species and populations and stuff like that. And then they're going to go ahead and contrast that with those environmental variables. So they could use temperature, precipitation like we did, or maybe they go a little bit more far out. Maybe they use elevation, land cover, disease, biome, stuff like that. So for my example today, I'm now going to go ahead and model out that student perspective. So the students would go to arcgis.com, and then they would sign in with their Google account provided by the school district. And they're going to go ahead and sign in here. And then from there, they're simply going to go click on the map at the top left. And so this experience that we're going into is called ArcGIS Online Map Viewer. It's actually part of ArcGIS Online's Cloud Suite. So there's a few videos linked below on how to go ahead and use ArcGIS Online Map Viewer for students. But students, all they would do is go ahead and left click and add some layers, right? So I'm going to go ahead and study the sickle cell allele frequency compared against malaria, right, in Africa. So I'm going to look at Living Atlas, the world's largest geographic collection of data, and I'm just going to go ahead and look up for malaria. Prevalence among, let me maybe expand my search a little bit more. There we go. So I have a few data sets I can use here. Malaria prevalence among children in Africa 2015. That looks great. So now it's already gone ahead and loaded this layer for me. That's awesome. But I need to go ahead and find that sickle cell layer too, that I can compare this data against. Awesome. So someone from Esri's education team has already gone ahead and done this, probably for the exact same reason we have. So I now have these 2 layers, and students can simply hit this little eye icon, left click to turn on and off these layers. So we can kind of tell, let's see, I'm going to turn these layers on both at the same time. It's kind of a little obvious now that the areas of interest for us are going to be Let me go ahead. So students can already kind of go ahead and tell. Oh, whoops, wrong tool. Oh, whoops. There it is, sketch. I'm just gonna go ahead and remove that old sketch layer. They can kind of see that global sickle cell hemoglobin allele frequency seems to be, according to the symbology that we have here, 17.6 is the high end. So that's the areas that we're seeing more of the sickle cell alleles in humans, right? So in that case, what about making this a little bit, we wanted to make this easier on the eyes and maybe we want it to really pop out. Well, we can go ahead and just quickly change, what's it called, the symbology by going to effects, and then I'm actually just going to hit invert, and then boom. So now those areas that are white are the ones that we know are actually the areas. It's the same data, I just put a different representation on it. So maybe students would go ahead and they start to note that the areas of interest are going to be, let me make this a polygon tool actually. They're starting to see it's these areas, right? So they can go ahead and sketch out that area of interest really fast. And then double left click to finish their polygon. Oh, okay. Boom. And then, so this sketch, and then I can just go ahead and re-edit this, and I'm going to call it area of interest. Boom. All right, and let's say maybe I want to make this really pop out. So I'm going to go ahead and make it, the fill color is going to be bright red. All right, so that's probably enough symbology for now. So let me go ahead and turn off sickle cell frequency. And we can see that from our sketch, the areas that have higher sickle cell frequency also tend to have higher malaria prevalence, meaning that that trait for sickle cell is also likely related to malaria prevalence. Pretty cool thing that we've already gone ahead and had students make, right? So what we can do from here now is we can have students simply just go ahead and save their map. So I can save as, and then I'm just going to make this malaria sickle cell case study, right? And then maybe the student would name it their name and the period. So I'll just do first Estevez, because I'd be teaching myself, obviously. So I'm going to go ahead and hit save. Oh, whoops. And then from there, we've already seen the ArcGIS Online is save this, and I can actually go into share map, and I can just copy a link to this map, and let me just make sure that the setting manage sharing. They can make sure it's sharing to everyone. Simply just hit save. I'm going to copy that link one more time, and just to show that you wouldn't need an account, go into an incognito tab, and now I have a map that has that exact same data. So teachers or peers go ahead and see the exact same data that student is interacting with. They can turn on the malaria layer again. They can turn on the sickle cell frequency and that sketch that I made to show those areas of interest, right? So that's just a simple example of how students can actually use this to answer the rest of their worksheet, right? They can go ahead and add those species and trait distributions. They can add those two environmental layers. We only did one in this case on diseases. And then if they wanted extra credit, I showed you just how easy it is for students to go ahead and adjust the symbology. For example, when we did that quick inverting to make sickle cells pop out a little bit more, it's as simple as just left clicking here, turning on some effects, and just making sure that it's still legible to their audience. And then finally, students can use that map that they just created to go ahead and answer the rest of your worksheet that you assigned to them on showing, making a really quick claim on whatever trait or gene that they were examining, and then making a conclusion based on that information that they were analyzing to show why the trait or gene was affected by environmental factors. In our case, we use disease and malaria. They can share their link with you, put the link here, or maybe they take a screenshot of this to show it a little bit more interestingly. And then finally, they can go ahead and write a really quick 1 to 2 sentences explaining the data they analyzed to show why they think that those factors are affecting gene and trait distribution in that area of the world. So that is just a really quick way to show how ArcGIS Online and then MapMaker can both be used in classrooms to add another geographical lens when you're teaching something as simple as natural selection in AP biology or Unit 7. So, thank you. I hope this was helpful, and keep mapping.